Good morning and welcome. We are so glad that you are with us this morning. And whether you're here on site or with us online, we want you to know that you can be a full member of this church. You can participate in our mission of learning to live a life of love. If you do live in this local area, we would love for you to visit us on site, and we hope that you'll join us next Sunday. But if online is the best choice for you, we have a lot of resources for you to utilize. You can go to our Facebook page and you will find these services archived there. You can share them from there. On our website, you'll find the content from our classes and our sermons also archived so you can view them and share them. And also on our website, there's an opportunity for you to become a financial partner with us to help fund this growing ministry. Again, we're so glad that you're with us on this very special morning here at Stamford. Journalists have analyzed the language that we used to describe the last 12 months. And they have found that two words are used again and again by most of us: unprecedented and uncertain. As we searched for some way to talk about what these last 12 months have been like, we have said these are unprecedented times. These are uncertain times. If you watch the commercials that were made during 2020, you'll find those two words coming up again and again. The uncertainty of it all is part of what makes these last 12 months so difficult. Just how long is this anguish and sorrow going to last? What's going to be on the other side of it? Uncertainty and unprecedented could also describe the feelings of the disciples of Jesus as we listen in on their conversation beginning in John chapter 16. In a positive way, they are living through unprecedented times. Never before in human history has God walked among us in the flesh. And yet also in a negative way. These are unprecedented times. These are uncertain times. Because now this same Jesus is talking about his death. This same Jesus is describing his forthcoming gruesome death by crucifixion. This is something the disciples do not have a roadmap for. They are experiencing anguish and sorrow. They're wondering how long this is going to last. They're wondering what's going to be on the other side of it all. And so Jesus searches for a metaphor to help them make sense of this misery. Listen to his words in John 16, beginning of verse 16. A little while, and you will see me no longer. And again, a little while, and you will see me. So some of his disciples said to one another, "What is this that he says to us? A little while, and you will not see me? And again, a little while, and you will see me? And because I am going to the Father?" So they were saying, "What does he mean by a little while? We do not know what he's talking about." Jesus knew that they wanted to ask him, so he said to them, "Is this what you are asking yourselves? What I meant by saying a little while and you will not see me, and again a little while and you will see me? Truly, truly, I say to you, you will weep and lament, but the world will rejoice. You will be sorrowful, but your sorrow will turn into joy. When a woman is giving birth, she has sorrow because her hour has come. But when she has delivered the baby, she no longer remembers the anguish for joy that a human being has been born into the world. So also you have sorrow now, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice, and no one will take your joy from you." To make sense of these uncertain times, these unprecedented times, Jesus uses the image of pregnancy. Pregnancy, Jesus says, is accompanied by anguish and sorrow, weeping and lament. This can be true for the weeks of pregnancy. This can be true for the birth process itself. And yet, Jesus says, birth is also accompanied by joy that eclipses the agony. On the other side of it, there is this new life emerging, something unlike what has been before, and with it brings glorious joy. And this, Jesus says, is what God is doing in this uncertain moment. The disciples are experiencing anguish and sorrow, but it is not anguish and sorrow as an end in itself. It is part of a process. It is part of a birth process. This sorrow and anguish will result in new life. This weeping and lament will give birth to something new that will lead them into an unfathomable joy that eclipses all that has come before. The image that Jesus uses here is rooted in numerous images throughout Scripture where God is described as a mother. Hosea chapter 11. Yet it was I who taught Ephraim to walk. I took them up by their arms, but they did not know that I healed them. I led them with cords of kindness, with the bands of love, and I became to them as one who eases the yoke on their jaws, and I bent down to them and fed them. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 18, you were unmindful of the rock that bore you, and you forgot the God who gave you birth. Isaiah 42, verse 14, for a long time I have held my peace. I have kept myself still and restrained myself. But now, God says, I will cry out like a woman in labor. I will gasp and pant. Isaiah 66, as one whom his mother comforts. So I will comfort you. You shall be comforted in Jerusalem. And Matthew 23, verse 37, Jesus says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it, how often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. God is often portrayed as a mother. Jesus portrays himself as a mother. And this is the same imagery Jesus is using in this text in John chapter 16. There is agony and sorrow, weeping and lament, but it is going to give birth to glorious joy on the other side. In medieval times, the church fully embraced this image. There was, in fact, an image from that time picturing Jesus as a birthing mother. Many of us would find it very strange indeed, this picture portraying Jesus on his agonizing cross and yet giving birth to new life. It was an artist's way of picturing what Jesus is describing here in John chapter 16. In this trial and travail, God is delivering glorious joy. Traditionally, we here at Stamford take this Sunday close to the beginning of spring, and we focus on this truth. Spring, often called a time of rebirth, follows the agony and sorrow that sometimes accompanies the hard winter. In spring, we find joy and new life. We relearn that the pain of winter delivers the joy of spring. We celebrate how even in the dead of winter, God is at work. And in the spring, we see the delivery of that work, this hidden work that's been taking place in the womb of the earth. And today, on this very special Sunday, as we install and appoint 3 new elders and myself into the leadership of the Stamford Church, I want to make a couple of points of application from the truth of Jesus in this text. First, God can birth tomorrow's delight through today's discomfort. To make sense of his suffering, Jesus points to pregnancy. Crucifixion would cradle resurrection. Labor would deliver life. And in this, Jesus gives meaning to our own misery. God continues to birth delight through discomfort. Wounds become the womb for the wondrous work of God. And we see that today. Through the challenge of 2020 and all that's transpired around us and within us as a church, we are witnessing today the birth of new life and new things as God brings to Stamford 3 new elders in Art, Julie, and Debbie to serve alongside John, Scott, and Guy, and a new minister to serve alongside Dale, Debbie, Eddie, and Sandy. In the thick of things during 2020, none of us knew that this was going to happen. It was a hidden work of God in the womb of our lives. What we knew was the sorrow and the anguish, the weeping and lament of uncertain, unprecedented times. But today, God gives birth to something new in the leadership of this church, and we celebrate that today. We can also trust that in an even larger sense, God is birthing something new in the life of the Stamford Church. This church has never experienced what it had to experience in the last 12 months, moving to online services, the pausing of so many significant ministries, the inability to host our traditional gatherings. But the call has been to trust. The call has been to maintain hope. The call has been to believe that through that sorrow, through that agony, through the weeping and lament, God has been birthing something new. And on the other side of this, there will be new life here in the Stamford Church and a glorious joy unlike any we've ever experienced before. And I want you to know that this is true for every single one of you listening today. You have endured your own sorrow and anguish. You have experienced your own weeping and lament. And I want you to hear that God can still deliver delight even through that discomfort. God can still bring new life to you. God can lead you to a place of joy that will eclipse all that has come before it. And second, the new God is birthing is unlike any new before. The thing about births and the thing about springs is that no birth is just like any other birth. No spring is just like any other spring. Anne of Green Gables, that precocious child of literature, once reflected, everything is made new in the spring. Springs themselves are always so new, too. No spring is ever just like any other spring. It always has something of its own to be its peculiar sweetness. No spring is just like any other spring. And no birth is just like any other birth that came before it. God is bringing new life into the leadership of the Stamford Church. He's birthing something new. And this new will not necessarily be like the old. It will have a life of its own. God's bringing new. He is birthing new in the life of the Stamford Church. And the new on the other side of this for this church will be something unlike any we've ever experienced before. God's bringing new to you. Through the agony and the sorrow, God is birthing new joy. So many of us have been asking for so long, when are we finally going to get back to the way things were? When are we finally going to get back to normal? And I think that Jesus' answer to that question in this text is, we are not. Because the new that God is birthing on the other side of this will be unlike anything that we have ever experienced before. And the one thing we can know for sure is that it will be a time of laughter, It will be a time of joy. It will eclipse all that has come before it. And so hold on to hope. Hold on to faith. Believe in what God is doing in the womb of our lives, our hearts, and our souls, and celebrate it.